If you were to look at Iowa State basketball as a sandwich, you could make the real argument that Joshua Jefferson would be the bread. And without a bread, what are you left with? We're talking about it today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Wherever you're watching or listening, be sure to subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we're going to be talking about the potential for Joshua Jefferson being on the move and how that impacts Iowa State. Then we'll talk a little bit about potential for Dominick Nelson to come in, potentially taking a visit to Iowa State on that men's basketball kind of transfer portal side. What does that mean for the Clones? And then finally, we'll talk about Kelvin Sampson and his shout out to the Big 12 after Houston defeats Duke in the Final Four. Before we get that far, though, today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert. Now, it's kind of that season, right, with the transfer portal, and no one really knows what's going on, and there's rumors here and there's rumors there, and I'm not going to lie to you guys. I don't love reporting on rumors, but where there's smoke, there is generally some fire, right? There is a little bit of sometimes some truth, even if it is just a little bit of a nugget in there, and so we are going to talk about kind of some traction being gained around the thought of Joshua Jefferson leaving Iowa State. Nothing is official. Nothing is in the books. I don't believe Jefferson is even in the portal at this time, at least of recording this. But there is kind of some rumors that there are some SEC schools looking to offer a lot of money for Joshua Jefferson to make the transfer. I've seen numbers around $3 million. And if that's the case, I cannot be upset at Joshua Jefferson for going and snagging that. That's life-changing money right there. And so nonetheless, to kind of go outside of that, I do think that this is a tough situation for Iowa State to find themselves in. You know, obviously Joshua Jefferson, very pivotal piece for the Cyclones, so you want to try and keep him around as much as you can, but also don't know if we can compete with $3 million, right? That's kind of a lot of money. Now, granted, all of this is being thrown around like as just kind of internet fluff, I guess is how I would say it. It's just a lot of he said, she said. So we don't know anything for sure. Let's make that very clear. But you know, LSU is kind of one of those teams that's been talked about that might be trying to snag Joshua Jefferson. And also the timeline on this is that it's trying to get done, I think, as quickly as possible, because of that House versus the NCAA whole deal going down today. This will be released on Monday. So, I don't know what the timeline of that looks like, but at least as of right now, I do know that Markel Sutton has committed to LSU, and that could impact, obviously, if Joshua Jefferson is still a target or if he is, going to play alongside Markel Sutton. How does that whole thing look? Transfer from Omaha, obviously Omaha in the big dance this year was the Summit League Player of the Year. And he committed to LSU. He's a 6'9" power forward, averaged 19.3 points and 8 rebounds a game. So that's a big addition for LSU. And I honestly think that that's kind of a good spot for if you're a Cyclone fan. Like, okay, well, if they got Sutton, then do they really need Jefferson? There's an argument to be made there. I like I said, that's a lot of money, $3 million. But like, it's still a rumor, you know? So is it true that the $3 million is the true part? Is it true that Joshua Jefferson is kind of exploring potentially going into the portal? Is it true that teams are just reaching out to Joshua Jefferson like crazy? That part, I am sure there is some truth to teams reaching out to be like, hey, we can make this happen. We can get this to go, because he was so successful this year and was such a pivotal piece to this Iowa State offense. And so Iowa State obviously going to have to try to keep him around. The roster as of the 5th is Taman Lipsey, Milan, Joshua Jefferson right in there, Nate Heisey, Cade Kelderman, Jamarian Bateman, Dominicus Plata, Killian Toure, Xavier Mitchell, Eric Mulder, Mason Williams, Blake Buchanan, and then Anthony Rise, that preferred walk-on there. So a couple transfers in Williams and Buchanan and Mulder, and then obviously that freshman class coming in. But I do think, like, I the way I'm phrasing this is, it's like, oh, this is groundbreaking. No, that's not the case. I think everyone can agree, like, this team is better with Jefferson on it. And so part of it too is I want to go down the avenue of like what Matt Campbell said about the football players when asked about like a spring game, like, oh, everyone's been trying to get our players for forever. And so we're not too worried about that side of things because we know they want to stay. Same thing could be said of Joshua Jefferson and like TJ of like, hey, we expect this. We're going to see guys reaching out to our guys or teams reaching out to our guys. And we just know that this is the culture we've built and they're happy here and whatnot. And so I don't know how that whole side of things is going. But I do wonder what kind of, obviously what's going on the coach's side of this whole deal. Obviously we think of the players and, you look at Joshua Jefferson, if he really is receiving a $3 million deal, like, I mean, you kind of got to take something like that. That's just an unbelievable number. But from the coach's perspective, how is this going on their end? And what is TJ thinking, obviously as far as roster construction and portal targets and all of that. And we will get to another portal target that Iowa State here has here in the second segment. But for now, like, it's got to be a really tough time for TJ and obviously like that whole staff of, I would imagine right now it's just, we got to go full in on keeping Jefferson here because that's a hard hole or shoe to fill for next year. Like he's unbelievable. We've talked about his vision and his scoring ability and whatnot. Obviously, very all around great player. I would like to see the turnovers kind of weeded out of his game just a little bit. I don't know how much of that was a product of the system or whatever, but there was a fair amount of turnovers I'd like to see cleaned up. But that doesn't mean I'm like, okay, well, I've seen the turnovers. I don't care if Joshua Jefferson leaves Iowa State. If he goes to LSU, that's not the case at all. I obviously would rather him, and it sounds like I'm saying that, and it's like, wow, groundbreaking news. We'd rather Joshua Jefferson be on the team. Yes, I would. Okay. I know that that's not the most crazy statement I've ever made. But I do think that this is a challenging time with the NIL, right? And so before we get into the whole rev share situation, like if it is just collective versus collective, I don't think Iowa State can keep up. I think this is it's just now you got to pitch like the culture and I think that the winning culture of Iowa State and just the potential for a deep tournament run or a Big 12 championship, obviously regular season or tournament, whichever one, I think is kind of the pitch here. I think you have to go with that angle as opposed to, yeah, we can do 3.1. If they're going to go 3, we can go 3.1. I don't know if Iowa State even can afford to get into that situation. And if they can, I don't think you want to be there. I don't know if you want to spend your whole like that. That to me feels like it would just be everything that you've got left in the can. I don't know if you want to drop that all on one guy per se. Joshua Jefferson, obviously very good player, but he doesn't, to me, have that kind of take over the game ability that we've seen from some other players. And not to say that like his consistency is a bad thing. Like it's like not worth rewarding. Like I talked about, what is a sandwich without the bread, and he's kind of that guy. Like he's consistent, he's solid, obviously in multiple facets for this team. And so I do think he's important. I just don't know if you can drop that whole budget. If it's 3 million or whatever the case might be. Like I said, all these numbers and things just floating around, bunch of rumors at this point, but there's something is probably true if this is being thrown around and it's gaining traction. And so, nonetheless, I think at the end of the day, you just have to go with that pitch and hope that is strong enough. It felt like with obviously the post-game presser and Joshua Jefferson being so emotional and it felt like he really had a lot of love for this team and what this team has done, and this obviously the university and the organization and all of that, and his relationship with TJ, I'm sure very, very strong. And I think that this is, I do think he'll come back. I do, and it's what we kind of have been operating on. And of course, he's not in the portal right now. But also, if that number is going to go through, if that number were to hit the bank account, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money, and I don't blame really anybody for taking that because boy, I don't know what I would do if I was presented with a number like that. I can tell you that for sure. I mean, that's a huge number. And so it's a guy you got to keep on the team, but I don't know how it's going to go. And if it plays out, between this recording and the House versus NCAA deal, like that's I think the timeline for this. I don't think this is going to happen later in the week. I think this is going to happen pretty much immediately. So keep your head on a swivel for that. But overall, not a great spot for Iowa State to be in. You just kind of are banking on that culture. If you're going to get into a bidding war, I don't think this is a spot you can. I don't think you can play that game if you're Iowa State, unfortunately. Speaking of that culture, we're going to try to use it to keep Joshua Jefferson, but we're also going to try to use it to bring in Dominick Nelson. This could be a huge get for the Iowa State Cyclones in the transfer portal, and we're talking about it more coming up right after this. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with the TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, and everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Iowa State in the transfer portal has certainly been something. A lot of a bit of an emotional roller coaster is how I would describe it here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. But while we are kind of fighting with keeping the guys we want to keep and bringing in more guys, we got to talk about the name Dominick Nelson. Unbelievable. Unbelievable here. This guy could be really the next level for Iowa State and move the needle here. 6'5" junior at the guard position. This guy can score. Was the player of the year, played for Utah Valley, and they won their conference. This is I believe the WAC conference. Yeah, and they won the conference at 15-1 on the year. Very solid showing from the Wolverines. But let's take a look at Dominick Nelson, just in particular. Sitting down at 14.4 points a game, 5.2 rebounds, and 1.7 assists. The 43.6% field goal percentage there looks great. On the year, really just solid shooter. That's kind of where I found this guy. Nothing too crazy, obviously, with a 25% three-point shooting there, but 43% from the floor. And this is a guy, too, that, you're not going to pull LeBron James off of the Omaha Mavericks. It's going to be a guy that you're going to have to develop a little bit. But I think from what I see here, these numbers, like we can work with this. And some of the shots he was putting up in his highlight tape look really solid. I did see a little bit, it felt like of hero ball to me, but also I wonder if a portion of that is because you're playing for Utah Valley and not in the Big 12. And that can all kind of, I think, go into that. But at the end of the day, this is a guy that I do think that TJ can kind of work with and mold into that shooter that this team needs. As I talked about in the first segment, I took a look at this kind of like roster as it sits right now and ignoring really everybody but the guys returning. That's the guys that I want to look at. Mulder, Williams, Buchanan. We don't know for sure how they'll work in Iowa State system. The freshmen coming on, not every freshman's going to hit. I think a lot of them could, but it's just the nature of the situation. You're going to have some that are better than others. But looking at those guys coming back, really, Taman, Milan, Joshua Jefferson, potentially, Nate Heisey, Cade Kelder. I mean, where is our shooter here? Who is our guy that's going to get points? Is it Milan? Because he's kind of hot and cold sometimes, but he certainly can go. Is Joshua Jefferson that guy? Not a spot-up shooter, but definitely could be that scorer. Nate Heisey could stretch the floor a little bit if we start to see more of what he did in the second half of this year, kind of the later third of this year when he finally found his jump shot a little bit. He could be that guy. I do think that Iowa State needs a true shooter, especially with the way that this game is going. I mean, look at what Alabama did I believe it was against BYU. Yeah, when they shot like 52 threes out of their like 60 something attempts from the floor, they practically only shot from beyond the arc and won that game. Now, granted, they shot very well. And if you shoot 50 something times from three, obviously that's like 5 out of 6 shots are from three. That's a very high percentage. So if you're not making very many of those, is that a great approach? Probably not. But you kind of got to shoot the shot that you're going to make. And they were making the threes, and that's just going to make it impossible for some teams to keep up. And if Iowa State can at least present a threat at the 3-point position, that makes it so much easier. And look at what the team did this year, and especially with no Milan, no Keyshawn. With no the Milan is really the best example because it's a pretty large sample size. One of the main things I noticed was teams could just kind of load up on the inside. Like, you don't have to respect that outside shooter as much. Nate Heisey wasn't quite as hot at that point. Taman Lipsey never really a huge scoring threat. Obviously, a huge impact on the game guy, but overall not going to put up 30 points a game. Curtis Jones, had his nights for sure, but it wasn't something that I noticed defensively teams were really catering towards. Obviously, you're going to play that a little bit, but with no Milan, teams were able to kind of load up on the inside and know that, like, hey, if you want to get the ball to Jackson and Jefferson or Chatfield, whoever's out there on the inside, we're going to be ready for that. If you guys want to try to shoot, you can. You just haven't been shooting that well. We'll give you that. We're going to take away the inside, and it worked. Obviously, Iowa State, I think, was 3-4 through that game, the 7-game stretch there. And so Iowa State presenting a threat at the outside, even if it is just like, if you get him the ball, he might shoot it and he might make it. Like, that's a really solid, like, Nate Heisey. It never really felt like until later in the year when he had the ball, he was going to shoot it. Early, middle of the year, it really felt like he was kind of a cog in the wheel, would whip the ball around, right? Would run, set screens, this, that, the other, more of a defensive guy. But on the offensive side of the floor, when he got the ball, if he wasn't wide open, it didn't feel like he was going to be taking very many shots. So he's not necessarily stretching the floor. Curtis was very much willing to pull that trigger, but if he wasn't on, that's only one guy, right? That's just kind of tough to give the green light to a guy when it felt like the key was getting it inside, especially with Jefferson being so dominant. I think if you can build some depth out at the guard position with some shooters, you're going to see great success on the inside as well. I think that's just kind of that's how basketball kind of works a little bit. And I do think that this pickup of Nelson, this could be a great depth addition for the Cyclones here. Just looking at their kind of roster and what we saw last year, or I guess, not that long ago from this team, like really getting into it at the end of the season, just getting worn down, tired. I would love to see a little bit, even if it's not load management, but it's like a bigger roster kind of turnaround, rotation. I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. I know that I've been told that that's not necessarily the best case, best approach, and that's fine. That's why I'm obviously not, the basketball head coach. But, I just would wonder if we could maybe get a few more guys some minutes if they can shoot, even if it's a guy. I remember when I was in high school, man, I would have been maybe in junior high, but we went to the Iowa State whole basketball championship, like the state of Iowa tournament and stuff. And there was a kid on another team. Literally his only thing was he'd come out and shoot threes. Like, think of like Golke almost. Like, it wasn't like that as much, but he would come out and everyone knew his number was 3. Everyone knew when he got the ball, he was just going to shoot it, and he made it at a wild percentage. So if you have a guy, not that I'm saying we have a guy like that, but you can utilize that role. You can just have a guy that's like, he's going to shoot. We're going to put him out there. It kind of takes some minutes off of these guys. If he's a solid shooter and can play defense, like, boom, let's do that. That's kind of that angle. Not saying that necessarily that's what we would get from Nelson. I think that he does have a full package, but at the end of the day, I do wonder if there is going to be, I don't think TJ will change his philosophy, but I wonder if it's worth exploring for them to, like, hey, we're going to do this to save some legs later in the season, try to avoid injuries. Or is that playing scared? I don't know. You let me know down below what you think. Obviously see all those. And I think it's I think that's the great question for this team at the end of the day. But Nelson could certainly add something to this program. I think could be a huge deal. Now, Iowa State didn't quite get it done this year, but we are seeing another Big 12 team get it done on the big stage, and they had something to say. Kelvin Sampson did for sure. We'll talk about that coming up right after this. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery, and now I budget smarter and save more. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever as well. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Iowa State basketball not in the national championship. I don't know if you knew this. I hate to break the news if this is breaking news. But actually, there is a Big 12 team playing for the national title. This is awesome. This is super cool. I know I'm a big fan of it here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Iowa State, in the Big 12, certainly, I feel like it's a brotherhood, the Big 12, especially when you've got kind of the big bad SEC and what they have to say about how they're the best conference and they're taking over basketball now, and it feels like it's all the Big 12 together, and it feels like all of the Big 12 fan bases now are rooting for Houston in this national championship game. Like, this is going to be an awesome game. And Houston is a very, very good team. We talked about it. We played them. Unfortunately, Iowa State did not get it done against Houston. But there was a quote after the game that Kelvin Sampson dropped that I was like, okay, now we're talking. Okay. Right here, he said, I hear what people say, Duke this, Duke that. Duke's great. John Shire is awesome, but don't sleep on Houston. Don't sleep on Houston. We weren't 34-4 playing in the Toy Poodle League. Then goes on to say that I think they were 19-1 in the conference in the Big 12 play. And he's like, shout out my Big 12 brethren. This is the best conference. And so that, to me, awesome. I don't know if you guys are rooting for Houston in the title or if you're pulling for the Gators, but it feels like we should all be rooting for the Cougs. Okay, I think this is what they do. Shout out Locked On Cougs, Parker Ainsworth, opening up all the shows with the old symbol there. And that's, to me, obviously he's in the Big 12, right? So, like, I don't think Duke was on the podium saying, man, that Big 12 conference is just tougher than the ACC. It just is. Like, that's not going to happen. But the recognition of Kelvin saying, like, the Big 12 it got us ready for this. It really did. And that's what we were talking about with Iowa State. Like, these games, they're kind of like all Sweet 16 level games that you're playing like all year. You're going to have a few that are going to be not as difficult, maybe like you're around to 32 games, but still the Big 12. And then you've got games that are probably going to be like Final Four matchups, like Iowa State, Houston at full health. That could have been a national title level game, really. Obviously Houston in the national title, it really more fall on Iowa State to live up to that. But like the Big 12, very, very solid up and down. And so for Kelvin to say, like, hey, shout out to those guys because this is the real deal. This conference is legit. This is exactly what we've been talking about. Like, this is an opportunity for the Big 12 to gain some traction and for people to start to respect the Big 12. And this quote, like, just put it right in the face. Like, listen, guys, this is the reason. We put respect on our name. Like, this is actually, and to say it, to point it out is what I mean. Like, it's not just like you have to connect the dots. Like, okay, what conference is Houston in? Okay, they're in this Big 12 conference. Where is Houston playing? Okay, they're in this national championship game. Could it be a result of their schedule that would be the Big 12? Well, wait, who's in their schedule? Okay, the Big 12, other teams. Like, you don't have to do that. You can just listen to Kelvin Sampson say, hey, we weren't in some other league, some toy poodle league. We're in the Big 12, and the Big 12 is full of dogs. Shout out my Big 12 brother. And it's like, now we know. Now we know. I think that this is obviously you're going to have an SEC team on the other side in Florida. And shout out to them. Very good team as well. Auburn, also a very good team. That SEC matchup on that side of things. But Big 12 ACC, Big 12 comes out on top. That's all I'm saying. Now, the Big 12 did not have the numbers that the SEC had in the tournament. That's just it is what it is. And I do think we could have gotten another team in with West Virginia. I think they probably should have been in. I think they really could have won some games. And overall, I'm pretty sure now that I don't have the tweet in front of me, but the Big 12 now will have the best winning percentage in the tournament out of every conference, even with a Duke loss, or excuse me, the Houston loss in the championship. I'm pretty sure that is locked up now. That the winning percentage, just obviously Houston's deep run, Texas Tech, BYU, all of these teams that made it deeper than Iowa State, who got a win, but also got a loss, ended up 50% there. Not a great look. But that's a lot of wins from the Houston, the BYU, the Texas Techs of the world to add to the Big 12. And I think that this is a great point for, multiple reasons. It kind of feels like the same age-old, like, hey, this is going to help with recruiting, but it really does. Obviously, kids are going to want to play in a competitive environment. Big 12 is that. It really is. You're going to see some of the best basketball play coming out of this conference. I think that that's pretty much undeniable. But on top of that, like, that's going to help in the future with, West Virginia being on that bubble. Like, I can't believe they didn't get the nod this year. I'm not going to lie. But, like, hey, we've seen the Big 12 in the past. If they beat each other up, they're still all probably really good teams. Like, this is not just some random collection of mediocre basketball clubs. Like, this is a lot of elite basketball play. And if a team isn't, obviously the top of the top, like, there's no question that Houston was going to make the tournament. There was no question Iowa State was going to make the tournament. It's more about, like, the guys at the bottom, like the West Virginia. Are they good enough to make it? I think, honestly, you could make the argument that every Big 12 team would have at least made a game close in the tournament. Now, there were a couple at the bottom. I don't know how close it would have been. Okay. But, you're looking at it just strengthens the resume is the end of the kind of the end all be all here. And it's too bad we didn't, we're not going to get a Big 12 championship in the championship, right? Like, if Texas Tech could have made that run, that would have been really cool. Definitely bring it home to the Big 12. But I think that the Big 12 has been a part of 4 of the last 6 NCAA tournament finale games, championship games. I'm trying to think on too much going on right now, but I'm pretty sure that is 4 of the last 6 have featured a Big 12 team in them. I don't know. Is that good? You tell me. Like, that feels like that's pretty good. And I'm kind of just sick of, I wanted to bring it up because it's like, this is a big point. I can't believe that there is all this chatter about, like, oh, the SEC is better than Big 12 now. It is. Big 12, it's just not as good of a basketball conference. Like, the Big East might be better than the Big 12. Like, are you kidding me? This is a wild statement. So for Coach Sampson to come out and say, like, hey, shout out the Big 12. That's what ready to us for this. This Houston team seems to have the juice. This Houston team could bring home a title for the Big 12. And obviously we're all kind of rooting for them. Let me know down below. I guess if you are rooting for Florida, why? Also why you'd be watching Locked On Cyclones. So not really sure there, but nonetheless, this is awesome. Just that shout out was really neat. Definitely thought it needed pointing out. And I think that it'll show next year, when teams are in that middle of the pack, where, like, should they or shouldn't they? What are we looking at here? Still a very good team in the Big 12. I think no matter what, across the board, that's going to be, I think that's true. But that's just me. I don't know maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. And that could be the case. Nonetheless, thank you guys for sticking around. If you're not subscribed, what are you doing? We're proving it's a Cyclone state here. Could appreciate the help there. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.